The waitress said I don't serve men like you. The mafia boss smiled and said, yet here you are. The rain in Harborfall doesn't just fall, it attacks. It's a cold, driving assault that turns the asphalt of the West Coast into a glittering black mirror, reflecting nothing but its own misery. My misery. The neon sign of the Lark and Anchor Diner sputtered, casting the empty counter in flickers of sick pink and buzzing blue. An L, then an A, then darkness. Lark, Anchor, dark. It was almost 2 a.m. My shift had officially ended an hour ago, but here I was, scraping congealed ketchup off a plate with my thumbnail. My feet were 2 separate, aching entities, swollen against the inside of my worn-out sneakers. The circles under my eyes weren't just shadows, they were bruises left by sleepless nights and mounting bills. I was bone-tired, a slender frame of debt and worry held together by caffeine and spite. I was reaching for a stack of coffee mugs when the sound cut through the hiss of the rain and the low hum of the cooler. It wasn't just a car stopping, it was a disciplined halt, the sound of heavy, expensive tires gripping wet pavement in perfect, silent unison. I looked up. Through the rain-lashed glass, I saw them, not one car, but a procession. 3 sedans, all gleaming black like wet obsidian, parked in the red zone right out front. They had no shine. The rain just seemed to be absorbed by their paint, and they had no license plates. My stomach, empty save for stale coffee, did a cold, slow roll. This wasn't a lost tourist. This was trouble. The diner door opened, bringing in a gust of cold, damp air that smelled like the harbor and ozone. The little bell above the door didn't jingle. It gave a dull, terrified thud. 2 men entered first. They were built like the pylons holding up the Harborfall Bridge wide, solid and utterly immovable. Their suits were immaculate, unbothered by the downpour, as if the rain itself knew better than to touch them. They scanned the diner, their eyes missing nothing, cataloging the 2 remaining patrons, a trucker nursing a soda and a night shift nurse reading a paper. Their gaze dismissed them instantly. Then they turned, one holding the door open. He stepped inside. The man who owned them, who owned the cars, who probably owned the street they were parked on. He wasn't large like his guards. He was built with a different kind of geometry, all sharp angles and controlled grace. His dark hair was slicked back, untouched by the weather. He wore a charcoal overcoat that draped perfectly, suggesting a severe, tailored strength beneath it. He moved with a silence that was louder than any noise, absorbing the diner's weak light. This was Dorian Vale. Even if you didn't know the name, you knew the power. The Vale Consortium was a whisper in the financial pages and a scream in the underbelly of the city. He owned shipping lines, tech startups, and the politicians who voted on them. And he owned the shadows. His guards fanned out, one securing the entrance, the other taking a post near the restrooms, effectively cutting the diner in half. Dorian Vale walked to the counter, his polished shoes making no sound on the checked linoleum. He didn't look at the menu. He looked at me. His eyes were a strange, unreadable color, somewhere between gray and green, like the sea just before a storm. They held an unnerving stillness, a deep and patient intelligence. He wasn't just looking at me. He was assessing me, taking inventory of the cheap polyester uniform, the cracked cuticles, the defiant set of my jaw. The silence in the diner stretched thin. The trucker's spoon clattered once against his glass and then stopped, frozen. The nurse slowly lowered her paper. The air grew thick, heavy, and metallic. I planted both my hands on the Formica counter, my palms flat. I didn't care who he was. I was too tired to care. I was too tired to be afraid. All I saw was another mess I didn't ask for. My voice came out drier than I expected, raspy from hours of breathing in grease and disinfectant. I don't serve men like you. One of his guards tensed, a slight shift of his shoulder that suggested a hand moving under his jacket. Dorian Vale didn't even flinch. He simply watched me for a beat, the corner of his mouth ticking upward. It wasn't a smile. It was an acknowledgement, a flicker of amusement that was somehow more intimidating than any threat. He leaned forward, just slightly. His voice was low, a smooth baritone that seemed to vibrate in the air right in front of my face, smelling faintly of expensive cologne and something cold, like metal. Yet here you are. The challenge hung in the air, sharp and clear. He was right, I was here. I was trapped here by rent, by hospital bills, by the crushing weight of my brother Eli's problems. I wasn't just standing here, I was chained to the spot. Before I could find a reply, the bell on the door slammed open again, this time with genuine violence. There she is, the little snitch. My blood turned to ice. I knew that voice. 3 men spilled in, dripping rainwater and malice. They weren't suited. They were jeans and leather, scarred knuckles and dead eyes. The Black Gull Union, small-time thugs who thought they were big-time players, running protection rackets and small-scale contraband down at the docks. My stomach clenched. This was about the video, the one I'd taken on my phone last month when I saw them beating a dock worker who couldn't pay his marker. I'd sent it anonymously to a watchdog blog. It had stayed up for exactly 12 hours before being scrubbed from the internet. Apparently, anonymity wasn't enough. They were here because I'd reported them for welching on a debt, and now they were here to collect their own. The air in the diner fractured. The nurse gasped and bolted for the kitchen exit. The trucker slid out of his booth, hands raised, and back toward the door. This ain't got nothing to do with you, Mr. The leader, a rat-faced man with a poorly healed scar on his lip, sneered at Dorian Vale. Then he turned his attention back to me, his eyes lighting up with a cruel, proprietary glee. We're just here for the waitress. He took a step toward me. Dorian Vale didn't turn. He didn't raise his voice. He simply made a small, elegant gesture with his right hand, a flick of the wrist, as if brushing lint from his coat. It was all it took. His 2 guards moved. They didn't rush, they flowed. 2 shadows detaching from the walls in a single coordinated motion. They were between me and the Black Gull thugs, forming a solid wall of dark-suited muscle. They stood at ease, hands clasped lightly in front of them, but their presence was an absolute, unpassable barrier. It was the most menacingly polite thing I had ever seen. Armored courtesy. I pressed myself back against the coffee machines, the metal biting into my spine. My breath was trapped in my throat. I don't need favor from the Mafia. I spat. My voice was shaking, betraying the lie. I did need help. I was drowning. I was drowning in Eli's medical debt, in the threatening calls from loan sharks I didn't even know, in the hopeless, grinding poverty of this city. My brother, my tough-as-nails ex-Marine brother, was caught in a snare laid by men exactly like these. The rat-faced leader didn't appreciate the interruption. He was stupid. He mistook stillness for weakness. Get out of the way. Suits. This is union business. He pulled a knife. A cheap, serrated steak knife. Probably stolen from another diner just like this one. Dorian Vale sighed. It was a quiet sound, barely audible, but it was filled with an immense, profound boredom. He didn't move his body. He just looked at the man. And then, in the space between one breath and the next, it was over. Dorian's hand moved. It wasn't a punch. It was a blur, a precise, economical motion that seemed to defy physics. He caught the man's wrist as it lunged. There was a sickeningly wet, dense sound. A snap. The rat-faced man screamed, a high, thin sound that was cut short as his face was driven down onto the Formica counter. The knife clattered, spinning uselessly next to the sugar packets. Dorian held him there. The man's arm bent at an angle it was never meant to hold. His 2 thugs froze, their bravado evaporating instantly, replaced by the raw, primal fear of a predator they hadn't seen. I stared, my heart hammering against my ribs. I'd seen fights. I'd grown up in Harbor Fall. I'd seen brawls that spilled out of bars and left men bleeding on the sidewalk. This was not a fight. This was a correction. It was surgical. There was no wasted energy, no anger, just a quiet, terrifying, absolute precision. As if summoned by the scream, the distant wail of sirens finally rose over the sound of the rain. The Metropolitan Integrity Bureau. They were slow. Always slow in this part of town. Deliberately slow. Dorian Vale released the man, pushing him back toward his friends. "Get out!" The man whimpered, clutching his shattered wrist, his eyes wide with shock and pain. The three of them scrambled backward, falling over each other to get out the door and disappearing into the night. Dorian Vale straightened his cuffs. He turned back to me, his expression as calm and unreadable as it had been when he walked in. He reached into his coat and pulled out a wallet. He tossed several large bills onto the counter, far more than enough to cover the trucker's soda and the nurse's coffee, enough to cover the entire diner for the night. "For the inconvenience," he said. Then he placed a card on the counter, sliding it toward me. It was thick, creamy cardstock, with no name, no logo, just a string of 10 digits embossed in clean, black type. "When you decide to serve yourself, call." He turned and walked out, his guards falling into step behind him. The door closed with a soft, final click. The black sedans pulled away from the curb as silently as they had arrived, their red taillights bleeding into the rain and vanishing. I was alone. The diner was suddenly, deafeningly quiet, save for the hum of the cooler and the frantic pounding in my ears. My hands were shaking. I looked down at the money, then at the card. A wave of hot, useless pride surged through me. I snatched the card. I would not be bought. I would not be one of his assets. I tore it, the thick cardstock resisting, ripping with a satisfying, fibrous sound. I tore it right in half. And then, my hand trembling, I took the half with the last 6 digits and jammed it deep into the pocket of my apron, beneath my order pad and my few dollars in tips. I leaned against the counter, my knees weak. The air was settling, but something had changed. The smell of burnt coffee from the machine was still there, and the cold, wet smell of the rain still clung to the air. But now they were tangled together, twisted into something new, something that smelled like an escape and a trap, a dangerous, terrible invitation. My apartment wasn't a home. It was a box where I stored my exhaustion. The key sticking in the lock was the first battle of the night, and by the time I shoved the door open, I had already lost. The air inside was stale, smelling of old pipes and the curry from the apartment downstairs. The radiator ticked, a dry, metallic sound that set my teeth on edge, counting down the minutes until rent was due. I unhooked the flimsy polyester apron, the strings biting into the back of my neck, and let it fall onto the peeling linoleum of the kitchenette. In the cracked bathroom mirror, I looked worse than I felt. The fluorescent light was unforgiving, deepening the purple smudges under my eyes. As I unbuttoned my uniform shirt, I saw the other bruise, the one on my ribs. It was a mottled, ugly yellow and purple, the size of a man's fist, a souvenir from a debt collector who had visited last week, a reminder that the interest on Eli's first disastrous loan was compounding. My phone buzzed on the counter, a spider web of cracks obscuring the screen. It lit up with the usual chorus of failure. The first message was from Harbor Fall Mutual Bank, a $35 overdraft fee. The second was an email. I opened it, my stomach clenching. Harbor Fall Mercy Care. We regret to inform you that your application for supplemental aid for Eli Sloan has been denied due to outstanding balances on a previous account. Refused. The words were polite. The words were firm. Eli needed physical therapy. He needed medication the VA wouldn't cover. Medication to control his tremors and stop the nightmares that plagued him. He was a former Marine, a hero, and now he was being wasted every penny on an old hospital bill I thought I'd paid off. The air left my lungs in a cold rush. My fingers, numb, found the media folder on my phone. I scrolled past the few blurry photos of a better time and found the video, the one I'd posted anonymously. 12 seconds of grainy footage, showing 3 men in black gold jackets kicking a dock worker in an alley, laughing as they did it. I had felt a small, righteous thrill when I hit upload. It had been scrubbed from the internet in less than 12 hours. Not just taken down, erased, as if it never existed. Someone had a very long reach, a hand that could delete inconvenient truths. A draft from under the door reminded me I hadn't checked the mail. I walked down the 3 flights of crumbling stairs, the hallway smelling of damp drywall and boiled cabbage. My mailbox was jammed with junk mail and one single envelope. It was thick, expensive cream-colored cardstock. No stamp, no return address, hand-delivered. My fingers fumbled with the flap. Inside wasn't a letter, just a small card printed with a stylized logo of a black seabird, a gull, its wings spread wide. Beneath it, a single, typewritten line. You serve who you are told to serve. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact, a correction. This was their response to the diner, to my, I don't serve men like you. It was their way of telling me I had spoken out of turn, that I had forgotten my place. The next morning, I skipped sleep and took the number 12 bus to Dockview. The entire neighborhood was a construction site. Skeletal frames of luxury condos rising from the mud, plastered with signs promising coastal living to people who had never set foot on a fishing boat. Eli's transitional living facility was a clean, concrete block tucked behind the noise, smelling of industrial bleach and quiet desperation. He was sitting on the edge of his narrow bed when I walked in, staring at the gray wall. He looked smaller. The shoulders that had carried me through a childhood of scraped knees and bullies were slumped, his frame thin under a government-issue t-shirt. "Hey, Eli." He flinched, then his face rearranged itself into a weak smile. "Mira, you shouldn't be here. It's not good for you to come here." "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a brightness I didn't feel. "I brought you those protein bars you like, the peanut butter ones." He nodded but didn't reach for them. The silence in the room was heavy, filled with everything we weren't saying. "Eli, the Mercy Care application was denied. They said there's an outstanding balance, an old one. I don't understand. I thought we paid that." He closed his eyes. A muscle in his jaw jumped, just once. "It doesn't matter, Mira, just let it go." "Let it go. You need your meds. Eli, you need the therapy. What is this? What did you do?" He kept his eyes shut, as if he could block me out. It was just a small loan, just to cover the deposits for a new place, get us out of that dump. He said he helped veterans. He said it was no problem. A cold dread started in my stomach and spread to my fingertips. "Who? Eli, who helped you?" He finally looked at me, and his eyes were hollowed out, defeated. The shame in them was a physical thing, a weight that crushed me. Alden Price. The name hit me like a physical blow. Alden Price, the city's golden boy, the real estate mogul whose face was on billboards, the philanthropist who funded the new children's wing at the hospital, the man everyone knew, in whispers, was the clean, smiling, untouchable front for the entire Black Gull Union. My brother hadn't just taken a loan from a shark. He had taken it from the man who owned the entire ocean. I left the facility walking in a fog, my pride, my petty defiance at the diner. All of it felt like a sick joke. I had been standing on my tiny, imaginary moral high ground while my brother was chained to the ocean floor. I decided right then, walking under the rumbling overpass, that I would not call the number on that torn card. I would not trade one monster for another. I would beg, borrow, sell the last piece of my mother's jewelry. I would pick up a third job. I would fix this. The sun was bleeding into the industrial haze of the harbor, staining the clouds a sick, chemical orange. I was walking the pedestrian ramp over the freeway, the roar of traffic below, when I heard the engine. A rusted, beat-up pickup truck, the kind with oversized tires and a cracked windshield, roared up onto the walkway behind me. I flattened myself against the concrete barrier, my heart leaping into my throat. It didn't hit me. It swerved at the last second, the side mirror clipping my shoulder hard, spinning me around and sending me crashing to my knees. My purse scattered, a few coins and a tube of chapstick rolling across the concrete. The truck screeched to a halt about 30 feet away. The passenger door opened. A man leaned out, a dark silhouette against the glaring headlights. "This is your last warning, you stupid mouth," he yelled, his voice like gravel. "Price owns this city, you and your jarhead brother." He threw something, a glass beer bottle. It shattered on the pavement near my hand, spraying me with stinging drops of glass and stale lager. "Your turn?" The truck squealed, laying a patch of burning rubber, and sped off the ramp, disappearing into the river of taillights. I stayed there, on my knees, the rough concrete biting into my skin. My shoulder throbbed. A tiny shard of glass was stuck in the palm of my hand, a bright bead of blood welling up around it. I was shaking. It wasn't just fear. It was a rage so cold and absolute it stopped my breath. They had said his name. They had threatened Eli. I didn't go home. I went back to the diner, to the smell of grease and old coffee. I slid into the back booth, my hands shaking so hard I could barely pull the torn piece of cardstock from my apron pocket. The ripped edge was soft, fuzzy. The numbers were stark and black. My pride was a luxury. It was an expensive coat I could no longer afford to wear. My brother's safety was food. It was air. I pulled out my phone. My fingers were clumsy, slick with a little of my own blood. I typed the numbers I had memorized, then the 6 from the card. I pressed the call button before I could lose my nerve. It didn't ring. There was only a single, silent click, and the line was open. A voice answered, the same voice from the diner, smooth, calm, and with an authority that didn't need to be raised. "D, Vale private line." My throat was dry. I tried to speak, but only a small croak came out. He waited. The silence on his end was not empty. It was patient, expectant. He knew I was there. "Have you served yourself yet, Miss Sloan?" He knew my name. Of course he knew my name. The realization sent a fresh chill down my spine, but it was followed by a strange, dark wave of relief. I was no longer an anonymous, struggling girl. I was a person on his radar, for better, or almost certainly, for worse. I took a shaky breath. I started, my voice stronger. "I need a quiet night," and they put their hands on my brother. They ran me off the road, Alden Price's men. "Alden Price," he repeated. It was not a question. It was a confirmation. "Yes," I whispered, the fight draining out of me, leaving only the bone-deep weariness. "I just need a night. I need one night where they don't come for us. I just need time to think." There was another pause. I heard the faint, distant sound of ice settling in a glass. "Then I will buy you time," he said. "Go home, Miss Sloan. You will have your night." The line clicked dead. I walked the 10 blocks to my apartment. Every approaching set of headlights made me flinch. Every shadow seemed to hold a man. I fumbled with my keys at the lobby door, my hands still shaking. Then I saw it. Parked across the street in the same red no parking zone from the night before was a black sedan, sleek, silent, and without license plates. It was dark, its engine off, a void in the middle of the streetlight's weak glow. As I stood there, watching, a man stumbled out of the alley near my building. I recognized him, one of the smaller thugs from the Black Gull crew, the one who mostly hung around the corner store. He started across the street, saw the black sedan, and froze. He physically recoiled, as if he'd walked into a glass wall. He turned around, his swagger gone, and practically ran back into the darkness. I walked into my building, up the stairs, and into my apartment. I locked the deadbolt. I fastened the chain. I walked to the window that faced the street and looked down. The car was still there, a silent, unmoving guardian, a threat to my threats. I hated it. I hated what it meant, that I had made this call, that I had accepted this dark, terrifying bargain. But as I leaned my forehead against the cold glass, the window fogging with my breath, I let that breath out, a long, shuddering sigh that emptied my lungs completely. I hated myself for the wave of relief that washed over me. For the first time in months, I felt like I might actually be able to sleep. The quiet lasted for 2 nights. 2 nights of the black sedan parked across the street, a silent sentinel that made my skin crawl with a mixture of gratitude and dread. On the third day, my phone, the one with the cracked screen, remained silent. But a new one, delivered by a silent courier in a crisp gray uniform, lit up. It was a simple black device, sleek and heavy. One message. 7 o'clock, a car will be waiting. No address, no name, just an order. At 7 o'clock, I was waiting. I wore the only clean, dark pants I owned and a faded blue blouse. The car that arrived was not the sedan from my street. It was a luxury vehicle, the kind that whispered its expense. The driver, the same man who had guarded the diner door, stepped out and opened the back for me without a word. We drove out of my neighborhood, leaving the grime and the noise behind, and ascended. The Seabird Tower was the tallest building in Harbor Fall, a needle of glass and steel that pierced the low-hanging coastal clouds. The elevator was a silent, gilded cage, and my ears popped twice as we rose. The doors opened not into an office, but into a jungle. It was the Palladium Conservatory, a massive greenhouse perched on the roof of the city, shielded from the wind by towering glass walls. It was a world of impossible greenery, of ferns and mosses and trees I had only seen in books. The air was warm, humid, and smelled overwhelmingly of damp earth and sharp, wet mint below. Harbor Fall was a carpet of glittering, indifferent lights, impossibly far away. Dorian Vale was standing by a wall of cascading white orchids. Looking out at the city, he clearly saw as his. He wore a dark suit, no tie, the collar of his white shirt open. He didn't turn as I approached. "You wanted time, Miss Sloane. I gave it to you. Now, I will buy it." "I'm not for sale," I said, my voice sounding thin in the humid air. "Good. Things that are for sale are easily broken." He turned, his gray-green eyes assessing me. "This isn't a negotiation about your price. It's about your function." A woman stepped out from behind a massive fan palm. She was sharp, elegant, with dark hair pulled into a severe bun and a gaze that was as analytical as a surgeon's. She carried a tablet. "The men who visited you last week," Dorian began, his voice calm. "The men who ran you off the road, they were not just Black Gull thugs. They were sloppy. Yes, but their orders were precise. The man giving them is Rowan Pike." The name meant nothing to me. He is the ranking officer of the Coastal Anti-Syndicate Task Force, CAST. I processed that. A cop. "You're telling me a cop is harassing me? That's what the Black Gulls are?" "Pike is not the law," the woman said, her voice crisp and cool. "He's just another branch of Alden Price's payroll. I am Lucia Marrow, Miss Sloane. I am Mr. Vale's counsel." "Price wants the harbor," Dorian said, stepping closer. The smell of mint seemed to cling to him. "He wants my shipping lanes. He has been using the Black Gulls to terrorize legitimate businesses and using Pike's task force to squeeze me with regulations and seizures. He wants to force me to transfer my port authority." "What does this have to do with me?" I asked, my hands clenching at my sides. "You," Dorian said, "are a problem they didn't anticipate. You posted a video of Price's men. You publicly defied them in the diner. You are a loose end. And Pike, who is a creature of brutal efficiency, intends to tie you up." He paused, letting the reality of my situation settle around me. I wasn't just a random target. I was an annoyance to a very powerful, very corrupt system. "What do you want?" "Price is laundering millions through a digital art front. It's called Maritime NFT. The Black Gulls provide the muscle. Price provides the legitimacy, and Pike provides the protection, ensuring men like me are investigated while he gets a clean pass." He needed a witness. That was it. He was a mafia boss, and he needed a waitress to be his witness. The irony was bitter. "You want me to stand in a courtroom and point my finger at a cop and a billionaire? You want me to sell my soul to save yours?" "I am not asking for your soul, Miss Sloane," Dorian replied, his voice dangerously soft. "No one is buying. I am hiring your truth. You saw what they did. You know who they are. They threatened you. They threatened your brother." "Lucia," he prompted. Lucia Marrow tapped her tablet. She turned it to face me. It was security footage from the Lark and Anchor, Not the main camera, but a different angle, from the street. It showed the Black Gull thugs tumbling out of the diner. It showed Dorian's sedans pulling away. And then it showed. 45 seconds later, a CAS patrol car cruising slowly past. It didn't stop. It just slowed, registered the scene, and kept driving. I stared at the screen. The sirens I heard that night, they hadn't been coming to the diner. They had been waiting for the diner, waiting for the outcome. They were there, I whispered. They were waiting. They were providing overwatch, Lucia corrected. If Mr. Vale's men had been overly aggressive, Pike would have had grounds to arrest them, not the Gulls. Mr. Vale, you were the bait in a trap that had been set long before you poured your first coffee that night. I felt sick. I wasn't a person to them. I was a pawn, a piece of cheese. And now you're here, I said, looking at Dorian, setting your own trap. Precisely, he said, without apology. And you are, once again, the bait, but this time, the trap is for them. He laid out the deal. It was as clean and as brutal as he was. You give your testimony, not to the MIB who are on Price's payroll, not to the press. You will give it to me and to a secure third party. In exchange, I will expose the offshore accounts Alden Price uses to pay Pike and fund the Black Gulls, the very accounts he used to buy your brother's debt. My breath hitched. You know about that. I know that Eli Sloan is leveraged to Alden Price for $112,000, plus interest. I know that debt is the leash Price is using to ensure your brother's silence, and yours. When I expose that account, the debt vanishes. It becomes toxic, inadmissible. It disappears. Eli will be free. I stood there, surrounded by impossible, beautiful plants, and felt the steel jaws of the trap close. He was offering me everything. Eli's life, my life, all for the small price of my truth. But I had seen enough. I won't be your pawn, I said, my voice shaking but firm. If I do this, I do it my way. I need protection. Real protection, not a car parked on my street. Not one of your men. I want legal safety. You mentioned a third party. I want the Office of Urban Safeguards. I want a binding agreement, filed with them, that I am a cooperating witness, not an associate, and I want the right to say no at any time. If I feel this is going too far, I walk, and your men walk with me, all the way to safety. Lucia Marrow raised an eyebrow, impressed. Dorian Vale studied me, his head tilted. The silence stretched, filled only by the whisper of the conservatory's irrigation system. He was calculating the cost. He nodded. Once, done. The moment the word left his lips, the world exploded. There was a sound like a giant whip cracking the air, a high-velocity zing that passed my ear, and then an eruption of shattering glass. "Gun!" a new voice roared. Someone hit me. I was tackled from the side, a solid, immovable object slamming into my ribs and driving me to the hard, tiled floor. I landed with a painful grunt, my head hitting the wet soil of a planter. A man was on top of me, shielding me. It was not Dorian. This man was broader, harder. "Stay down, Miss Sloan. Stay down." Glass rained down on us like sharp, cold ice. A second shot, a third, more glass shattering. The air filled with the acrid, metallic smell of cordite. Then, a different weight covered me. Dorian Vale. He had thrown himself over me, his body covering mine, his hand clamped firmly over the back of my head, pushing my face into the dirt and the crushed mint leaves. "Theo status." Dorian's voice was a low command, a growl that vibrated through my entire body. He was terrifyingly calm. "Opposite roof, east balcony. He's suppressed, we are compromised," the man named Theo yelled back. I realized he was the guard from the diner, the one who had driven me, and he was now on one knee, a sleek black pistol in his hand, pointed toward the shattered wall of glass. I was pinned, trapped between the cold, wet floor and the unyielding warmth of Dorian Vale's body. I couldn't breathe. My face was pressed into the soil. I could smell the earth. the sharp, clean scent of the mint I had crushed, and the unmistakable, biting smell of gunpowder. His heart was beating against my back. It was not fast. It was a slow, powerful, steady rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. He was not afraid. And in that insane, terrifying moment, pressed under the body of the most dangerous man in Harbor Fall while bullets flew, I felt a wave of the strangest, most profound sensation. I felt for the first time in years, completely and utterly safe. "We're moving! Now!" Dorian commanded. He was off me in an instant, hauling me to my feet. My legs were jelly. "Lucia, the service lift. Theo, cover." Theo Rudd moved backward, firing 2 controlled shots into the darkness outside, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Lucia was already at a steel door I hadn't noticed, hidden behind a wall of vines. Dorian's hand was clamped on my upper arm, his grip like a steel band, half pulling, half carrying me. We plunged into a dark concrete stairwell and then into a clanging freight elevator. The heavy doors slid shut, sealing us in a box of gray metal. I was hyperventilating, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't clasp them. Lucia was checking her tablet, her face pale but composed. Theo was reloading his weapon with swift, practiced motions. Dorian was watching me, his eyes dark, his face a mask of controlled fury. As the elevator began its rattling descent, my eyes caught on something. On the floor, near my foot, was a single, perfect white orchid blossom. It must have been blasted from its stem by the first bullet, carried in with me on my clothes. It lay on the gritty metal floor, pristine and white against the gray, already bruising at the edges. I stared at it. I had been a waitress. I had been a broke, tired, angry woman trying to save her brother. Now, I was something else. The elevator dropped, and I knew, as I looked at that severed flower, that my old life had been cut away just as cleanly. There was no going back. My trajectory had been changed forever. I didn't go back to my apartment. I was moved. My new home was a high-end corporate suite with no name on the door, 20 floors up, with bullet-resistant glass and a view of a concrete courtyard. It was a sterile, beige prison. But it was safe. The black sedan was gone, replaced by an invisible perimeter I could feel but not see. The next day, I was taken to a different building, a nondescript office block in the financial district. But when the elevator doors opened, I was in a place that looked like a mission control room. This was the nerve center of the Vale Consortium. The air was cold, and the only sound was the quiet hum of servers and the click-clack of one person's keyboard. "This is Kestrel," Lucia said, gesturing to a figure hunched over a bank of 6 monitors. Kestrel didn't look up. They were a whirl of kinetic energy, dressed in a faded hoodie, their face illuminated only by the cascading lines of code on their screens. "They're moving containers," Kestrel said, their voice a digitized rasp. "North Ravel Logistics. Price is using his own port manifest to mask the movement. Look." They tapped a key, and one of the monitors flared to life with a 3D map of the harbor. Red and blue boxes shifted like a game of Tetris. "These red ones," Kestrel pointed, "are marked sold art, maritime nefti. They come in heavy. They sit in bonded storage for exactly 72 hours, and they go out empty." "He's shipping nothing," I whispered, watching the icons. "He's shipping value," Kestrel corrected, finally swiveling in their chair. Their eyes were bright, intense, and magnified by thick-lensed glasses. "He sells a digital token in NFT to an offshore shell company. That shell company buys the art. The money is now clean. The art is loaded into a container, which is then shipped to another shell company. But nothing is in the box. The container just validates the transaction. It's a physical receipt for a digital wash, and Alden Price is handling the entire chain." "Vera Narwhal," I said, reading the name on the digital manifest. Lucia and Kestrel both looked at me. "What?" "Vera Narwhal. That's the artist's name. I've seen it. I used to work part-time at a gallery. before I picked up full-time hours at the diner, the Saltwind Gallery, down on the wharf. Lucia's professional calm fractured for a second. She looked at Kestrel. The Saltwind is hosting the Tide and Glass Gala this week, Price's big charity event. Kestrel's fingers flew across the keyboard. A new screen popped up. Holy! It's the hub. The physical gallery is the server. And Vera Narwhal isn't a person. It's a generative AI. It's an algorithm posing as an artist, and Price is the one holding the keys. I wasn't just a witness anymore. I was the skeleton key. "I can get in," I said, the words out of my mouth before I could stop them. "The owner, Misha, he still likes me. The gala, he'll be desperate for extra hands. I can get back on the catering staff. I know that building. I know the offices." Dorian Vale had been silent, observing from the shadows of the room. He stepped forward. "No, you won't be staff. You'll be a former employee attending as a guest of a new donor." He nodded at Lucia. "Lucia will be making a very generous last-minute contribution to the Harbor Arts Endowment." The plan was audacious. Price's entire money laundering operation was run through a central server and a series of cold storage wallets, offline devices that held the crypto keys. They were all kept in the gallery's cold inventory room, the auction vault. I knew the room. I used to stock champagne there. My job wasn't just to plant a microphone. It was to get physical access to the main wallet. Training started that afternoon. It wasn't physical. It was psychological. Lucia hooked me up to a biofeedback monitor, a small sensor on my fingertip. "Lie to me," she commanded. "My name is Jennifer." The line on the monitor jumped, a tiny, erratic spike. "Your heart rate increased by 8%, your galvanic skin response spiked, your broadcasting, again." "My name is Jennifer." "No, don't just say the words. Believe them. A lie is a performance. You are not Mira Sloan, a terrified waitress. You are Jennifer, an art student, slightly bored, who is here for the free drinks. Again." We did it for hours. I learned to control my breathing. I learned to lie with a flat pulse. I learned to tell short, simple falsehoods. The sky is green. I've never seen this man before. I'm not afraid. Dorian watched. He stood outside the glass-walled conference room, a silent, imposing figure. He didn't interfere. He didn't coach. He just observed, his hands in his pockets, like a master craftsman inspecting a tool before its first, critical use. His presence was a heavy blanket, making it harder to breathe, making the training that much more real. I wasn't just learning to lie to Lucia. I was learning to lie under his gaze. The first crack in our new, sterile world came 2 days later. My old, cracked phone, which I had insisted on keeping, rang. It was Sal, the owner of the Lark and Anchor. "Mira, God, I don't know what you did, kid, but you gotta stay away." His voice was a panicked whisper. "Cast, they were just here. A full inspection. They fined me $3,000 for a permit violation on the walk-in. A walk-in that's been up to code for 20 years. They said if they see you here again, they'll shut me down. For good. I'm sorry, kid. You can't come back." The line went dead. I stared at the phone. My stomach felt like it was full of wet cement. They hadn't come for me. They had come for Sal. They had punished a good man who had given me a job when no one else would. This was the message: don't be difficult. I was still reeling from the call when Theo Rudd, Dorian's security chief, found me. His face, usually a mask of calm professionalism, was tight. "Miss Sloan, there's a situation with your brother." The bottom fell out of my world. "What, is he okay? What happened?" "He's gone. He signed himself out of the Dockview facility an hour ago. He left a note for you at the front desk. We have a team en route, but—" "He wouldn't just leave," I said, grabbing my jacket. "He wouldn't, not without his meds, not without talking to me. They have him." I ran for the door, but Theo blocked my path. "Mr. Vale has already anticipated this. We have a location, the Haven Clinic. Go there, now." Before I could argue, my new black phone buzzed, an unknown number. I answered, "Eli?" "Mira," his voice was a pained grunt. I'm sorry, I messed up. Eli, where are you? Are you hurt? They just said to give you a message. There was a scuffle, and Eli's voice was replaced by the same gravelly one from the pickup truck. You got your brother, Mouth. He's got a lot of debt, but Price is a reasonable man. A trade, for him. Stop playing games with Vale. You're out of your league. The line went dead. I was shaking, blind with rage and terror. I looked at Theo. They have him. They're going to trade him. No, Miss Sloane, Theo said, guiding me firmly toward the elevator. They just released him. That was the message. He was dropped 3 blocks from the Haven Clinic, which turned out to be a private, unmarked medical facility in the basement of a luxury high-rise. They had thrown him from a moving car. When I saw him, a raw animal sound tore out of my throat. He was on a medical bed, his face swollen, one eye blackened and shut. A doctor in a crisp blue shirt was gently stitching a cut on his forehead. He's stable, the doctor said, his voice calm and reassuring. 2 cracked ribs, severe bruising, mild concussion, but he'll be fine. We're keeping him here. Eli's good eye fluttered open. Mira... I gripped his hand, my knuckles white. I'm here, Eli. It's okay. I'm here. He winced as he tried to shift. On my back. The doctor gently lifted the hospital gown, taped to my brother's skin. Right between his shoulder blades was a small, white piece of paper. Trade you for the debt. I stood there, vibrating. The last piece of my old self. The part that was scared, the part that was just a waitress, burned away. It was replaced by something cold, hard, and sharp. I didn't hesitate. I walked out of the room, pulled out the black phone, and dialed Dorian's number. He answered on the first click. They have my brother, I said. My voice was not a plea. It was a statement. It was the sound of a trigger being cocked. They beat him, and they left him in the street. With a note. They want to trade me for his debt. The line was silent for a moment. Then, he's at the clinic. Yes, your doctor is with him. Good. He will not be moved. He is secure. Haven is the safest place in this city. No one will touch him there. I'm going to the gala, I said. It was not a question. I'm doing it, but not for your deal. Not to clear the debt. I'm doing this to end it. I'm doing this because I want them to pay. I know, he said. Get some rest. Kestrel has something for you. I went back to the war room. Kestrel was waiting, holding up a single object. It was a hairpin. A simple, elegant piece of silver, shaped like a stylized feather. It's pretty, I said, my voice hollow. It's a differential power analysis scanner, Kestrel said, their eyes gleaming. The gala is a trap for Price, but it's also one for us. You won't have time to plan a mic. You'll have 1, maybe 2 seconds inside that vault. You won't even have to plug it in. Just get this. They tapped the hairpin. Within 2 centimeters of his cold wallet, it'll induce a fault in the hardware's encryption. Read the power fluctuations and extract the private keys. Touch it, and it sucks everything out. By the time you walk out of the room, we'll own his entire art collection. I took the hairpin. It was heavy, solid, a weapon disguised as an ornament. The night of the gala. I stood by the elevator, my heart a cold stone in my chest. I was wearing a simple dark blue dress Lucia had provided. My hair was pulled back, the silver feather pin the only adornment. The elevator doors opened. Dorian Vale was inside. He was wearing a flawless black tuxedo. He looked like he owned the night itself. He held out his arm. I took it, my hand resting on the fine wool of his sleeve. We rode down in silence. The black car was waiting. The driver held the door. As I was about to slide in, Dorian stopped me. His hand rested lightly on my arm. He leaned in, his gaze intense, pinning me in place. He didn't tell me to be careful. He didn't wish me luck. He gave me one final instruction. If you're scared, look at me. I couldn't sleep. The gala was less than 24 hours away. The sterile, beige suite felt like a cage, and the silence was louder than the city traffic. The silver hairpin, Kestrel's high-tech skeleton key, was sitting on the dresser. looking innocent and deadly. I needed air. I needed something. I left the room. Theo, who had been an immovable shadow at the end of the hall, simply nodded. He knew I wasn't a prisoner. Not really. I was a component. He followed me, his footsteps silent, to the private elevator. I didn't need to tell him where I was going. The doors opened into the Palladium Conservatory. The rain was heavy tonight, a furious, cleansing downpour that hammered against the glass walls. The sniper's bullet holes were gone, replaced by new panes, but I could still feel the echo of the impact. The air was warm, thick with the smell of damp earth and the sharp, clean scent of the citrus trees. He was there, just as I knew he would be. He wasn't looking at the orchids. He was standing deeper in, among the small citrus trees, staring out at the blurred, watercolor lights of Harbor Fall. "You should be resting," he said, his voice quiet, not turning around. "How do you do it?" I asked, my voice cutting through the sound of the rain. He turned. His face was a mask of shadows and faint light. "Do what, Mira?" "This, all of this. How do you decide? How do you decide who is right and who is wrong? How do you live with the corrections?" I thought of the man's wrist in the diner. You break people. You run this city on a foundation of fear. "And Alden Price does not," he countered, his voice smooth, deceptive. "Does Rowan Pike, their foundation is just hidden, buried under charity events and legal statutes? They use paper and badges to do their breaking. I use my hands. The result is the same. They hurt your brother to send a message. I put him in a safe room with the best doctor in the city. Which of us used fear, and which used protection?" "That doesn't make it right," I insisted, stepping closer. "The gravel on the path crunched under my shoe. It just makes it your way. It's still a cage, just with a different keeper." He looked away, his gaze falling on the rain-streaked glass. A long moment passed. "Right," he said, the word tasting strange in his mouth. "Right is a luxury. Mira, it's a word invented by people who have never had to make a choice. I grew up in the ravel yards, down where the freighters go to rust and die. Right wasn't a concept. Right was surviving. Right was making sure my sister ate before the rats got to the food. Right was making sure the cold didn't kill her." He faced me fully, and for the first time, the mask was gone. I wasn't looking at the untouchable Dorian veil. I was looking at a man haunted by 1,000 impossible choices. "You don't learn to love with words down there," he said, his voice low, raw. "You don't learn how to ask or how to be gentle. You learn to protect. You build a wall. You hit first. You shield what is yours, and you destroy anything that threatens it. Love is an action. It's a perimeter. It's security. Everything else. All the poetry. It comes after, or not at all." His confession hung in the humid air, heavier than the rain. It explained everything. The armored courtesy. The way he had thrown his body over mine during the shooting. He hadn't been shielding an asset. He had been protecting what he had decided was his... My anger deflated, replaced by a sudden, aching understanding. "I know what that is," I said, my voice softening. "I've been protecting Eli my entire life, hiding tips, lying to landlords, fighting off his demons. I understand building a wall." I stepped closer, until I was standing just in front of him. "But it's not enough," I whispered. "Not for me." His brow furrowed, a flicker of confusion in his gray-green eyes. "I don't just want to be protected. Dorian, I don't want to be another part of your perimeter, locked in a safe suite while you fight the monsters. I need to be seen. I need the person I am standing with to see me, not just the threat to me." The rain hammered the roof, a steady, relentless beat, a metronome counting down the seconds of our truce. He studied my face, his gaze intense, as if he were memorizing it. He saw the defiance, the exhaustion, and the fear I was trying so hard to master. He took one slow step forward. The space between us, which had been a battlefield, was now electric. He stopped, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. His hands remained perfectly, painfully still at his sides. "Tell me what's right," he whispered, his voice rough. "Show me. This is not a language I know." This was the precipice, the moment before the fall. My heart was a frantic bird in my chest, but my hand, as I raised it, was steady. I moved slowly, giving him every second to pull away, to stop me, to put the mask back on. He didn't move. My fingers didn't touch his skin. I rested my hand on the lapel of his dark, perfectly tailored jacket. I could feel the solid warmth of his chest beneath the fine wool and the slow, powerful beat of his heart. It wasn't fast. It was steady, waiting. I looked up into his eyes. My pulse was thundering in my ears, but my gaze was clear. I was asking a question I was too afraid to speak. His eyes searched mine, and in their depths, I saw the answer. He gave the slightest, almost imperceptible nod. I rose on my toes. I kept my hand on his chest, a lifeline, and closed the last inch of space between us. The first touch of his lips was not a collision. It was a discovery. It was impossibly slow, impossibly warm. It held no demand, only a hesitant, gentle question. I could hear the soft, sharp intake of his breath. I could feel my own breath catch in my throat. His hand came up, not to my waist, not to my hair, but to my shoulder. His fingers rested there. A light pressure that was both an anchor and a profound comfort. He was holding me, but he was not gripping. He was not possessing. It wasn't enough. I made the choice. I closed the distance. My other hand came up, gripping the front of his shirt. I leaned into him, pulling him down, and I deepened the kiss. It was still slow, still warm, but now it was certain. When we finally broke apart, neither of us moved away. We were both breathing faster, the air thick and warm between us. I rested my forehead against his. His skin was warm, and I closed my eyes, just feeling him, a solid, real thing in a world that had become unreal. A small, shaky laugh escaped me. "What?" he murmured, his voice a low vibration against my skin. "You have a leaf in your hair," I whispered, a tiny, perfect citrus leaf, knocked from a branch by our movement, was tangled in his dark hair. I felt, more than heard, the huff of his own quiet laugh. It vibrated through his chest and into mine. "The perils of the jungle," he murmured back. I stayed there, forehead to forehead, but the moment of levity passed, replaced by the crushing weight of what was to come. "Dorian," I said, my voice serious, pulling back just enough to see his eyes. It's everything. Don't make promises to me that you can't keep. I have had a lifetime of broken promises." His gaze held mine. His hands moved from my shoulder, sliding down my arms, his grip firm and warm, steadying me. "I will not promise you a safe life, Mira. I will not promise you that this will be easy," he said, his voice intense, cutting through the sound of the rain. "I only promise what I can control, and I promise you this. I will not just protect you. I will walk with you through whatever door you open tomorrow. I am with you." I believed him. I slid my arms around his waist, pressing my face into the space between his neck and his shoulder. I inhaled his scent, sharp cologne, clean soap, and the faint, sweet smell of the mint from the conservatory. I held on, and he held me back. It was not a rushed, desperate embrace. It was long and slow and quiet. It was an acknowledgement. I felt the rigid tension in my spine, the constant, grinding fear I had lived with for years, finally begin to dissolve. I sagged against him, my exhaustion absolute. He must have felt me shiver, the damp air of the rainy night finally cutting through my thin blouse. He released me, just enough to shrug out of his heavy suit jacket. He draped it over my shoulders. It was in pos examples of warm, heavy, and smelled entirely of him, cocooning me. His fingers brushed the back of my neck, and then, with an impossible gentleness, traced the line of my spine. Once, a simple, grounding touch of reassurance. He didn't let go, and he took my hand, lacing his fingers with mine. He led me, Not back to the main elevator, but toward a small, private door half hidden by ferns and orchids. It led, I realized, to his private apartment, the one adjoining the conservatory. At the glass door, under the dim light of the hallway, he stopped. He turned me to face him, his free hand coming up to cup my jaw, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. This kiss was different. The permission had been asked and answered. It was bolder, hungry, a silent acknowledgement of the tension that had been building since the moment he walked into the diner. But it was still a question. His lips moved on mine, a dialogue, and my response was the answer. My hands found their way into his hair, gripping him, pulling him down. His arms slid around my waist, pulling me flush against him, lifting me slightly. We stood there in the doorway, caught between the wild, rain-lashed jungle and the warm, dark quiet of the room. The city lights below were a distant, blurred tapestry. The night, discreet, pulled a veil of rain and steam over the glass, giving us privacy. Hours later, or perhaps only minutes, he pulled back. The room was dark, the only light coming from the storm-lit conservatory. The gala, the danger, it was all still there, waiting. He held my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. From his pocket, he took something small and cool. It was a ring. It wasn't a diamond, and it wasn't a statement. It was a simple, unadorned band of platinum, heavy and smooth. He didn't put it on my finger. He placed it in my palm. "This is not possession," he said, his voice rough in the darkness. "It is not a chain. It is a signal, from me to my people, and from you to me." He gently closed my fingers over it. "If you are in a room and you cannot speak, if you are in danger, turn it. One notch. Theo will know. Kestrel will know. I will know." I clutched the solid, cool metal in my hand. "If you're scared, look at me." He had told me. Now he was giving me a voice, a silent one. I opened my hand and slid the ring onto the middle finger of my right hand. It fit perfectly. I looked at him. The mafia boss, the man from the slums, the man who had just shown me a tenderness that had completely undone me. My heart, which had been pounding with fear, then with adrenaline, then with passion, finally settled. It found a new rhythm. It was not the frantic, terrified beat of a trapped bird. It was the slow, heavy, steady beat of a drum, ready for the morning, ready for the war. The Saltwind Gallery was all glass and angles, perched on the edge of the bay like a poised, elegant shorebird. Inside, it was a sea of false smiles. The Tide and Glass Gala was in full swing. Champagne flutes chimed, and a string quartet sawed politely at some tune that was lost beneath the murmur of old money and new ambition. On every wall, on every freestanding pane of glass, the art of Vera Narwhal was projected. It was beautiful, in a cold, algorithmic way. Colors swirled and coalesced, shapes forming and dissolving, all timed to the music. It felt like we were in a very expensive, very clean aquarium. I was part of the scenery. The sea blue dress Lucia had chosen for me was simple, elegant, and felt like a costume. My hair was pulled back in a neat bun, secured by the heavy, silver feather hairpin. The platinum ring on my finger was a cold, solid secret. I carried a tray of champagne flutes, my old waitress skills clicking back into place. Misha, the gallery owner, had kissed my cheeks when I'd volunteered, thrilled to have an experienced hand, just like old times. "Mira," he'd gushed. I'd smiled, my pulse a flat line, just as Lucia had taught me. I saw them. Alden Price, tanned and immaculate in a white dinner jacket, looked every inch the city's philanthropist savior. He was laughing, his arm draped over the shoulder of Rowan Pike. Pike, poured into a black suit that looked one size too small, was flushed, his eyes darting around the room, full of a cop's nervous energy. They were predators at ease, confident in their territory. Then, the atmosphere in the room tilted. It was a subtle shift, a drop in pressure. The laughter near the door died first. Dorian Vale had arrived. He moved through the crowd not like a man, but like the tide the gala was named for. A quiet, inevitable, powerful force. People parted for him without seeming to realize they were moving. He wore a simple, flawless black tuxedo, and he looked like he owned the very concept of the night. He did not look at me. His gaze was fixed. Lucia, looking every bit the Italian heiress in a severe black gown that glittered with diamonds, had Misha cornered near the largest projection, talking loudly about a significant endowment for the arts. This was the first distraction. Dorian provided the second. He moved with lethal grace, intercepting Price just as he was reaching for a fresh glass of champagne. Alden. Dorian's voice was smooth, carrying just enough for me to hear as I pretended to straighten a stack of napkins nearby. A surprise. I didn't think this was your scene. Price's smile was a tight, plastic thing. Dorian, always a pleasure. We're just celebrating the arts. Something you... Consortium. Types should invest in... for the community. Oh, I am, Dorian said, taking a glass from my tray without looking at me. His fingers brushed mine, a touch as light and as cold as static electricity. I'm always interested in new art. One must know where the money is really going, after all, to ensure it reaches the artists. Their handshake was a clash of swords sheathed in velvet. Price's smile strained. Dorian's was non-existent. This was my cue. While Dorian held Price's attention and Lucia held Misha's. I slipped away from the glittering crowd. I moved past the catering station, my heart a trapped bird against my ribs. The cold inventory room was down a short, white hallway, just past the kitchen. I knew this hall. I knew the scuff mark on the baseboard. The door was locked, a high-tech numeric pad glowing green. But Misha, flustered by Lucia's millions and Dorian's presence, had left his master keycard on the prep station hook. Just as Kestrel predicted he would, I palmed it, my hands slick with nervous sweat. I slid the card. The light flashed. I was in. The room was cold, kept at a precise 60 degrees. It smelled of ozone and chilled metal. The only sound was the high, thin hum of servers. Against the far wall was a simple steel rack. On it sat a small, black, anonymous rectangle, blinking a single blue light, the cold wallet, the heart of the entire, dirty operation. My hands were shaking. I forced them still. My name is Jennifer. I am an art student. I am looking for the restroom. I repeated the lie in my head. My pulse, which had been frantic, slowed. I reached up, my movements casual, as if to fix my hair. I pulled the silver feather hairpin free. My watch, a simple, dark-faced device Kestrel had given me, was blank. I held my breath. I touched the tip of the hairpin to the plastic casing of the wallet. Just touch it. 2 seconds. 1 second, nothing. 2 seconds. The face of my watch, which was angled toward my body, flashed once. A tiny, bright green checkmark. Data, sucked. Keys, acquired. I slid the pin back into my hair, my fingers numb. It was done. I turned to leave, a wave of dizzying relief washing over me. The door was blocked. Rowan Pike was leaning against the door jamb, a self-satisfied smirk on his thick, flushed face. The door clicked shut behind him. The sound final. "Well, well, Mira Sloane," he said. His eyes did a slow, insulting crawl from my hair down to my shoes. "You're much prettier in person than you are in your file." My blood turned to ice. He knew. He'd been watching me, not Price. He stepped into the room, bringing the smell of stale cigars and expensive whiskey with him. "This is a big boy room you've wandered into. Mira, way out of your league." He advanced on me, and I backed away until my legs hit the server rack. "Price, he wants you gone. He's a man of simple solutions," Pike said, conversationally, as if we were discussing the weather. On the other hand, I'm more reasonable. I see a girl like you, smart, tough. You've got fire. Maybe we can make a different arrangement." He was close now, his bulk blocking the light from the hall. You tell me what Vale has on you. You tell me what he's planning tonight. You cooperate. And I can make all your problems disappear. Your brother's debt, the threats, all of it. I can even make you rich. This was the trade, my life for Dorian's. I let my eyes widen. I let a tremor run through my shoulders. I let my breath catch, a perfect performance of terror. I don't know what you're talking about, I whispered. Please, I begged. I was looking for the restroom. The door was open. He laughed, a short, ugly sound. Don't be stupid. This is your only way out. He'll feed you to the sharks when this is done. I'm offering you a lifeboat. He reached out as if to touch my face. I recoiled, taking 2 fast steps backward. No, please. The steps were calculated. They put me behind the steel server rack, breaking the line of sight from the small, domed security camera above the door, just as Lucia and I had drilled. My left hand, hidden by the rack, went to the ring. The platinum was cold against my skin. I twisted it. 1 sharp, 45-degree turn to the right. The signal was sent. Pike was still advancing, enjoying the fear. Stop playing hard to get. You have 3 seconds to decide. Whoop, whoop, whoop. The sound was so loud in the small room it felt like a physical blow. The fire alarms, red emergency strobes kicked on, painting Pike's confused, angry face in flashes of demonic light. He swore, loud and vulgar, spinning around, his composure shattered. What the hell is this? This was Theo. In that one critical second of his disorientation, I didn't run for the door he was blocking. I ran for the other one, the steel delivery door at the back of the room. I slammed my full body weight into the panic bar. The door crashed open, and I stumbled out into the chaos of the kitchen. Staff were yelling, dropping trays of food. The alarms were screaming. I didn't stop. I blended into the panic, just another terrified staff member, and pushed my way through the swinging doors back into the main gala hall. It was pandemonium. Elegant guests were now just a panicked herd, moving toward the main exits. The string quartet had scattered. I saw Pike burst from the hallway, his face a mask of purple rage. He scanned the crowd, his eyes wild, searching for me. Before he could take 2 steps, Dorian was in front of him, a wall of calm in the middle of the storm. Pike tried to shove past him. Get out of my way, Vale. This is a fire evacuation. I'm sure. Dorian said. He didn't raise his voice, but it was a command, cutting through the noise. Several people nearby, frozen in their indecision, turned to look. Officer Pike, a word, before you go. I said, move. I was just wondering, Dorian continued, his voice dangerously polite. If you could give a public comment to the OUS representative I see cowering over there. He gestured to a random, terrified man in a tuxedo. About the Harbor Arts Endowment Fund, my accountants are just fascinated by its creative tax structure. Pike froze. The name of the fund, spoken so loudly, so publicly, hit him like a bullet. Across the room, I saw Alden Price. He had been directing guests toward an exit. He heard it. He heard the name. His tan, healthy face went a ghostly, sickly white. And then, Kestrel made the final move. The alarms cut off, the red strobes stopped. For one, single, silent, breathless second, the entire gallery was plunged into darkness. Then, the projectors, all of them, they snapped back on. But it wasn't art. It was a spreadsheet. It was a ledger, projected 20 feet high on every glass wall of the gallery, illuminating the shocked, confused faces of Harbor Falls elite. At the top, the elegant Vera Narwhal logo flickered. It dissolved, pixel by pixel, and reformed into the crude, sharp logo of the Black Gull Union. Then, the numbers, a waterfall of them, offshore accounts in the Caymans, transfer codes, dates going back 3 years, and names. Transfer from Maritime NFT to Harbor Arts Endowment. Payout to Alden Price. Payout to R. Pike. Cast internal accounts. Payout to Dockside Logistics. Black Gull Union. It was all there. The entire money laundering operation, the payoffs, the bribes. Kestrel had taken the keys I'd stolen and unlocked the front door of their conspiracy for the entire world to see. A collective, horrified gasp sucked the air from the room. A dozen phones were instantly out, recording the damning evidence. Price looked like he was going to vomit. Pike was a statue, his face a rictus of pure, unadulterated panic. I didn't stay to watch the end. I wasn't needed anymore. I slipped through a side exit, the one leading to the public seawall. The cold, damp air hit my face, and I sucked it in. My lungs burning, I ripped the silver hairpin from my hair, my hand shaking so violently I almost dropped it. I leaned over the stone railing, my stomach churning, and stared down at the dark, churning water. My reflection stared back, a ghost in a blue dress. I did it. I was alive. I heard a single footstep on the pavement behind me, soft, confident. I didn't need to turn around. A heavy, warm tuxedo jacket draped over my shoulders, shielding me from the wind. The scent of him, clean, sharp, and safe, enveloped me. Dorian came to stand beside me at the railing. He didn't touch me, and he just stood there, a solid presence in the chaos, as the first distant wail of real sirens began to cut through the night. We stared out at the dark harbor. My heart was still a frantic drum, but the cold, sharp air tasted different. It wasn't just salt, it was the sweet, sharp, dizzying taste of survival. The sirens were real this time, not a timed illusion like at the diner. They grew from a distant wail to a piercing shriek, reflecting off the glass walls of the gallery. Red and blue lights painted the sea wall, turning the fog into a pulsing, chaotic mess. "They're MIB," Dorian said, his voice low, his hand still on the jacket over my shoulders. He was scanning the approaching vehicles. "This is the part where they separate the witnesses from the suspects. You are a witness." "And what are you?" I asked. "A suspect." A standard blue and white patrol car pulled up first. Followed by an unmarked sedan, 2 officers in MIB uniforms stepped out. They looked professional, tired, and official. "Miss Sloan, Mira Sloan," one of them called out, his flashlight beam cutting through the fog. "We're here to escort you. Protective custody. We need your statement downtown." It was the out, the clean break, the legal protection I had demanded. I looked at Dorian. His face was a mask of neutral calm, but as I started to move, his hand tightened on my arm, just for a fraction of a second. A warning. "They're plates," he murmured, so low only I could hear. "The sedan, it's smudged. Dirt, just over the last 2 digits. I squinted. He was right. What? The license plate on the official MIB car was blurred, as if by a strategically wiped grease rag. A cast trick. They weren't MIB. They were Pike's men, dressed in stolen uniforms. My blood ran cold. "What do I do?" "You go," he said, his voice flat. "You are a cooperating witness. You have no reason to run from the MIB. If I stop you, I am the one obstructing justice. You are in the car. You are in their hands. But you will not be alone." He stepped back, raising his hands slightly in a gesture of capitulation. A man cooperating with the law. His eyes met mine, and they were filled with a cold, hard fire. "Look at me." "We'll take good care of her. Mr. Vale," the officer said, his hand on his sidearm. I let them lead me to the unmarked car. The door shut with a heavy, final thunk. The world went silent, muffled by soundproof glass. We pulled away from the curb, leaving Dorian standing alone on the sea wall. A solitary, dark figure, swallowed by the flashing lights of the fake police. We drove for 5, maybe 10 minutes in absolute silence. The 2 officers in the front said nothing. They weren't heading downtown. They were heading toward the industrial sprawl of the port. The car slowed. It pulled over in a dark, wet alley under a rumbling overpass. The passenger door opened, and a large figure ducked inside, filling the front seat with the smell of whiskey and rage. "Rowan Pike." He didn't even look at me. He just spoke to the driver. "Good. Take the service road to Hanlon Pier. Get the tactical unit in place. I want this done." He settled into his seat, then finally turned, his eyes visible in the dim, green glow of the dashboard. His face was a mask of raw fury. The public humiliation at the gala had stripped him of all his composure. "You stupid," he hissed. "Stupid little girl, you think you won. You think your little data broadcast meant anything. It meant nothing. It's inadmissible. It's illegal. You and your mafia boyfriend, you just handed me the whole case." My heart was hammering so hard I was afraid he could hear it. I gripped the cold platinum ring in the pocket of Dorian's jacket, my knuckles white. "Control your breathing. My name is Jennifer." I don't know what you mean." "Shut up," and he snapped. "Here's your lesson. Price is already on a plane to a non-extradition country. That data was his exit plan. But me, I'm staying because you just gave me the excuse I needed." He leaned in, his voice dropping. "We're going to Hanlon Pier. It's a nice, quiet, abandoned place. And your boyfriend, who is predictable, is going to follow you. His trackers, his men, they're all watching this car. And when he arrives to play the hero, my cast unit will be waiting. It's a tragedy. A known criminal kingpin, Dorian Vale, ambushes a police protective detail to silence a witness. He's killed in the resulting firefight, and you're caught in the crossfire. One shot, two birds." He smiled, a real, genuine smile of profound, psychotic victory. He was going to kill us both. I remembered Lucia's training. A lie is a performance. I remembered Dorian's words. Control. I forced a tremor into my voice. You can't. They'll know. That data. Everyone saw it." Pike laughed. "Everyone saw an accusation. But I'm a cop. Who are they going to believe now? This is a beautiful, clean case. And I'm the hero who finally brought down the Vale Consortium. My retirement's going to be very, very comfortable." I saw the opening. "Retirement," I whispered, playing the part of the terrified, broken witness. They must pay you a lot for this." His arrogance, inflated by his imminent victory, made him brag. Price was cheap, but the gratitude fund. He tapped the side of his nose. "Let's just say, the real money isn't in the art, it's in the appreciation, a little private account down in Belize, for all my hard work." He had just given me the motive, the missing link, the offshore account Price didn't put on the screen. My hand, deep in the pocket, found the ring. I twisted it, a sharp 90-degree turn. Signal sent. We were speeding now, the road slick with rain. The warehouses of the port district were dark, skeletal shadows against the stormy sky. "It's a shame, really," Pike was saying, looking out the window. "A girl with your fire—" He never finished the sentence. A sound cut through the rain. Not a siren, a high, screaming whine. The sound of a Japanese motorcycle at its red line. "What the hell?" the driver said, his eyes flicking to the side mirror. A single, impossibly bright headlight appeared alongside us, a figure in black, unrecognizable behind a dark visor. Theo. He wasn't trying to shoot. He was trying to steer. Theo swerved, ramming the bike's reinforced frame directly into the front wheel well of the sedan. It was a perfect surgical strike. The driver screamed as the steering was ripped from his hands. The car spun, a sickening 360-degree skid on the wet asphalt. Tires shrieked, metal screeched, and we crashed, hard, through a chain-link fence. The world was a blur of noise and impact, and then we slammed to a halt, our front end buried in a stack of empty pallets inside a vast, dark container yard. For a second, there was only the sound of hissing steam and the ticking of hot metal. "They're here!" Pike roared, fumbling for his door. It was ripped open from the outside. Dorian's men, they were not polite this time. They were shadows, fast and brutal. The driver and the other guard were dragged out and disarmed in seconds. Theo was already there, his gun pressed to Pike's temple, shoving him face first against the side of the car. "Clean," Theo said, his voice calm. The back door opened, and I tumbled out, gasping, my knees buckling on the gravel. Dorian's personal car, the black sedan from my street, slid to a stop beside me. He was out before it stopped moving. He didn't come to me. He went straight to Pike. I grabbed his arm, my voice hoarse. "Don't kill him. Don't. We need him." Dorian looked at me, then at Pike, who was spitting and cursing. He nodded to Theo. "He needs to breathe. He's no use to us dead." Lucia was already there, pulling open the back door of Pike's sedan. She emerged a moment later, holding a black tactical laptop. "It's worse than we thought. It's a CAS dispatch coordinator." She opened it on the hood of Dorian's car. "He wasn't just planning to ambush you. He was coordinating a legitimate CAS raid on your Hanlon warehouse. Right now, he was going to use this car's GPS to prove you ambushed him, then plant laundered money from the gala in your warehouse. He was building a perfectly clean, perfectly legal frame. Pike was going to win, using the full, dirty power of the law." They were all looking at Dorian, waiting for the order to run, to hide, to make Pike disappear. But I was the one who spoke. "No," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "All the pieces were in my head, the gala data, the gratitude fund, the dirty legal trap. We don't run. We don't hide. We flip the board." Dorian turned, his full attention on me. "Kestrel still has the data from the hairpin, right?" I asked Lucia. "Yes, a full copy backed up. And Pike just gave me the last piece, the gratitude fund in Belize, his personal payoff. Kestrel can find that." Lucia smiled, a thin, dangerous expression. "Kestrel can find anything. Then we don't let the MIB or CAS control the story," I said, my voice gaining strength. "We use the one group we know is clean, the OUS, the Office of Urban Safeguards. We don't just send them the data, we stream it, live, right now. We send them the gala ledgers, we send them Pike's bank account in Belize, and we send them the recording of him in this car, confessing to the entire plan." There was a stunned silence. Dorian looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. It was not just respect, it was awe. He tapped his earpiece. "Kestrel, you heard her. Can you do it?" Kestrel's digitized voice came back, crackling with excitement. "A public whistleblower portal on the OUS mainframe. I can force a live feed. It will be public. They won't be able to bury it." "Do it," Dorian commanded. He turned, the plan forming instantly. We split. Pike was right about one thing. They're all waiting at Hanlon Pier. They need a target. I'll give them one. I'll draw his tactical team out. Keep them busy. "No," I said, panic rising. "That's suicide. That's what he wants." "It's a distraction," he said, his voice firm. "I'll keep them occupied long enough for you to get this done. Lucia, your only job is her. Get her to the OUS headquarters. Get her in front of a camera. Get her on the record." He looked at me, his face grim. "This is the move, Mira. This is where we win." He didn't wait for an answer. He and his men were gone, taking Pike, vanishing back into the labyrinth of containers. Lucia shoved me into the back of her car. "Let's go. We've got 10 minutes, max." The car tore out of the container yard, tires spinning on the wet pavement. We raced through the dark, flooded streets of Harbor Fall. The storm had finally broken, the sky opening up. Rain hammered the windshield in blinding sheets. The city was a dark, drowning mess. I was shaking, my adrenaline fading, replaced by a cold, sharp dread. I watched the blurred, broken lights of the city fly past. He was driving into a trap. For me. "I'm scared," I whispered, the words torn out of me. Lucia gripped the steering wheel, her eyes fixed on the road. "Good, use it." "No, not of them. Not of Price or Pike. I'm scared for him." The admission felt raw, dangerous. "Lucia, I think I'm in love with the most dangerous man in this city." Lucia took a sharp left, the car hydroplaning for a terrifying second before the tires gripped. She didn't look at me. A small, grim smile played on her lips. "That's fine, Mira," she said, her voice quiet but fierce. "As long as you've decided to be just as dangerous to your own fear." The sky cracked open with a flash of lightning, illuminating the slick, black streets. Harborfall went dark as a transformer blew somewhere, as if a curtain had just been drawn, signaling the start of the final act. Lucia's car didn't just stop at the Office of Urban Safeguards. It felt like it crashed into the curb, the tires screaming in the wet. The building was a block of brutalist, gray concrete, a fortress of bureaucracy that seemed designed to withstand a siege. Tonight, it would have to. We burst through the glass doors, soaking wet, Lucia's authority parting the two sleepy night guards like a ship's prow. We didn't wait for an invitation. We took the elevator to the third floor, to the emergency management office. A man in a rumpled suit, his tie loosened, met us. He was pale, already looked defeated, and his nameplate read, Regional Director Evans. Miss Marrow, Miss Sloan, for he said, his hands fluttering nervously, This is an unprecedented breach. Kestrel, your hacker, has locked our public portal. I'm getting calls from the mayor, from the press. Why? Good, Lucia said, brushing past him. Then you know how serious this is. Serious? Evans squeaked, following us into a sterile conference room. Alden Price is this city's budget. He's not just a donor. He's the guarantor on the new municipal bonds. If I move against him, if I legitimize this feed, he will gut Harborfall. He will bankrupt us all. I stopped. I turned. The fear I'd felt in the car, the love, the panic, it all coalesced and hardened into something cold, heavy, and sharp. I'm not asking you to move against him, Director, I said, my voice low and shaking. Not with fear, but with rage. I'm not asking for your permission. I am informing you that this is happening. The data is already public. Your choice is not if this happens, but what side you are on when the dust settles. I took the black, sleek phone Kestrel had given me and slid it onto the port in the center of the conference table. On the large wall monitor, the screen flickered to life. It was a split feed. One side showed a secure OUS live testimony graphic. The other side was a grainy, tactical feed from a camera on one of Theo's men. I saw the pier. Hanlon Pier. I saw the rain, the wind, and the dark, churning water. And then I saw Dorian. He walked out from behind a stack of containers, his hands in the pockets of his tuxedo pants. He was alone, a single, defiant figure on the long, wet wooden pier. The lights hit him, blinding white floodlights from a dozen vehicles, cast tactical vans, black sedans belonging to Price's private security, and surrounding them, like hyenas, were the cobbled-together vehicles of the Black Gull Union. They had him surrounded, trapped. My breath caught. I am Mira Sloan, I said, my voice suddenly clear. Ringing in the sterile room, I stared at the camera on the phone. I am a waitress at the Lark and Anchor Diner, and I am ready to give my public testimony. The feed from the pier was silent, but I could see Dorian talking. He was negotiating. He looked calm, unbothered, as if discussing the weather. Theo's voice crackled in my earpiece. A live feed just for me and Lucia? It's over, Dorian was saying to the wall of men. The data is public. The accounts in Belize, the payoffs to cast, the gala. It's done. You are cleaning up a mess that is already spilling into the street. Just walk away. From the shadows near Theo's position, I could see them holding Pike, his hands bound. He was watching the confrontation, and he was also watching something on a phone one of Theo's men was holding in front of his face. He was watching me. I continued, my eyes fixed on my own feed. It began 3 weeks ago, when Alden Price's men, the Black Gull Union, entered my place of work. I laid it all out, the diner, the MIB car that waited, the threats against my brother, Eli, the face-to-face with Pike in the gallery, the cold wallet, the silver hairpin. As I spoke, Kestrel's work flashed on the public feed, the ledgers from the gala, the transfer codes, and then the new data, a new account, the Gratitude Fund, based in Belize, with a direct automated monthly payment to a holding company owned by Rowan Pike. Director Evans looked like he was going to be sick. His private desk phone rang, a shrill, terrifying sound in the quiet room. He picked it up, his hand trembling. Director Evans' office. His face went from pale to the color of ash. Mr. Price. Sir, yes, I see the data, but yes, I understand the municipal bonds. I understand. You would call in the note. The entire city. He hung up the phone, his hand dropping as if it were dead. He looked at me, his eyes wide with terror. That was Price. From his jet, he said if this feed does not stop in exactly 1 minute, he's pulling his backing. He's calling in the city's debt. Harbor Fall is insolvent by morning. I met his gaze. The coppery taste of blood filled my mouth. I had bitten my lip so hard it had split. I didn't care. Then he better find a way to make another call, I said, my voice raw. Because I am not finished. I turned back to the camera. Rowan Pike did not just take bribes. He tried to have me killed. On the pier, Pike saw it. He heard me. He saw his name, his private, untouchable fund, laid bare for the entire world. He snapped. The veneer of the corrupt cop vanished, replaced by a cornered, rabid animal. "Oh, do it," he screamed, lunging against his bonds. I heard his voice, raw and frantic, through Theo's earpiece. "Take her out. Kill the feed killer. Do it now." That was the order for the sniper posted outside my window. But before I could even process the threat, the tactical feed from the pier erupted in motion. Pike, in his rage, had given a second command. "He's resisting," he shrieked to his cast team. "He's armed. Light him up. Take him." A single, brilliant red dot appeared on the pier. It wasn't on Dorian. It was on Theo, who was exposed. His attention divided between Pike and the feed. The laser was painted directly over his heart. On the monitor, I saw Dorian's head snap to the side. He saw the laser. He didn't hesitate. He didn't think. He acted. "Theo!" His voice was a roar. He moved, a black blur, shoving Theo with the full force of his body. He threw his man backward off the direct line of fire, clear of the sniper's aim. The shot cracked, a high-velocity sound that punched through the roar of the storm. Dorian stumbled. He didn't fall, but he was hit. He staggered. His left arm clamped to his right shoulder and leaned heavily against a concrete pylon. A dark stain spread rapidly across the shoulder of his black tuxedo jacket. I stopped breathing. The room went silent. My voice died in my throat. He was shot. He had been shot for me. My mind, which had been so clear, shattered into 1,000 pieces. I was back in the diner, helpless. I was on the ramp, the truck bearing down. I was the girl with no power, no options. No, be dangerous to your fear. Lucia's voice, Dorian's, mine. I slammed both hands on the conference table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Evans jumped, his eyes wide. "He's been shot!" I screamed, my voice breaking. "Your star witness, Dorian Vale. He's been shot on your own live feed by a cast tactical unit while surrounded while unarmed. What can I—" Evans stammered, paralyzed. "You want to fix this?" I roared, pointing at the screen where Dorian was sliding slightly, his knees buckling. "You want to save your career. You want to save your bankrupt city. You save him. He's not a suspect. He is my witness. I demand official protection. I demand you. Issue a preservation order. Right now, protocol. Harbor White." Lucia was at my side, her voice like ice, formal and legal. "She is correct. Director, Protocol Harbor White. You issue an immediate, binding order of witness preservation. Dorian Vale is now a material asset of the Office of Urban Safeguards. He's legally untouchable. If that cast unit fires another shot, they are not engaging a criminal. They are executing a protected state witness on a live feed that is currently being watched by the press and, by now, the Justice Department. Your move, Director." He was trapped, utterly, completely trapped. Price's financial ruin on one side, aiding and abetting a public, videotaped assassination on the other. He lunged for his phone, his terror finally finding a direction. "Get me the commissioner," he bellowed, his voice cracking. Get me the state police authorized protocol. Harbor White for asset Dorian Vale. Effective immediately. Scramble all available OUS and state units to Hanlon Pier. Priority 1. All units officer involved shooting in progress. Hostile fire. He slammed down a heavy, old-fashioned rubber stamp onto a piece of paper, his hand shaking with adrenaline. The thud was final. On the tactical feed, the chaos was immediate. The CAS team, hearing the new orders flooding their radios, lowered their weapons, their movements confused, their authority instantly gone. The pier, which had been a private killing ground, was suddenly the center of the universe. The tide was drenching the pilings, and the rumble of the storm was joined by a new sound. A wave of new sirens, real ones, OUS and state police, flooding the dark, wet streets of Harborfall. The law, slow and corrupt, had been beaten, but the law, desperate and cornered, had just arrived. I didn't wait for Lucia. The second protocol Harbor White was declared. I was moving. I left the OUS conference room at a dead run, my mind a blank. White static of terror. There was only one thought: he was shot. He was shot. Get to him. Lucia was right behind me, her composure as flawless as ever, her voice in her comms. Theo, what is his status? Where is he? We took the elevator down, the ride lasting an eon. The tactical feed in my ear was chaos. Men yelling, OS sirens screaming, now terrifyingly close. Theo's voice cut through. He's hit, shoulder. We're in the Hanlon Dry Storage Warehouse. Unit 4. South Wall. We're holding. The OUS and state police were flooding the pier, their cars creating a barrier of flashing blue and red lights. They were yelling at the CAS team, who were standing down, confused and furious. I burst through the line of cops. "Miss Sloan, wait, it's not secure," one of the OUS agents yelled. I ignored him. I ran past the tactical vans, my dress soaked, my feet slipping on the wet pavement. I saw the warehouse, a dark, corrugated metal box. The door was open. I ran in. The air was thick with the smell of old rope, salt and copper, the smell of his blood. He was there, halfway down the length of the vast, dark space, slumped against a rusted steel support pillar. Theo was beside him, pressing a wad of gauze to his shoulder, his other hand holding his gun, covering the door. Dorian was still on his feet, just his tuxedo jacket was gone. His white shirt was a ruin of dark, wet crimson clinging to his skin. The rain was hammering on the tin roof, a deafening drum. He was pale, his teeth gritted, but his eyes were open. They were searching the darkness. "Mira," he breathed, the name a pained exhale. I skidded to a halt in front of him, my chest heaving. I'm here. I looked at Theo. How bad?" "It's clean," Theo said, his voice clipped. "Through and through, but he's losing blood. We need to move." "Look at me," I commanded Dorian, my voice shaking. I cupped his face, my hands trembling but sure. His skin was cold, damp with rain and sweat. I forced him to meet my gaze. "You're okay. Breathe with me. Just breathe." I took a deep, shuddering breath. He matched it, his own breath hitching in pain. His good hand came up, covering mine on his cheek, his grip weak but desperate. "Don't," I whispered, my voice breaking, my anger and my love so tangled I couldn't separate them. Don't you dare close the mang for me." A ghost of a smile, pained and perfect, touched his lips. "I protect what I believe in," he rasped. "Not this time, Vale," a voice roared from the warehouse entrance. We all spun. Rowan Pike stood there, silhouetted against the flashing lights of the police blockade. He was no longer a cop. He was a cornered animal, and he was not alone. He had a hostage. His arm was clamped around the man's throat, a gun pressed to his temple. It was Eli, my brother. His face was a mask of terror and shame. He had left the clinic. He had made a mistake. Eli. The name was ripped from my throat. "He got restless," Pike snarled, dragging Eli into the warehouse. "Decided he needed cigarettes. My men were accommodating. They found him before your men did." My world, which had just started to right itself, shattered again. "Yeah, it's over, Pike," Theo yelled, his gun trained on him. "The OUS is here. You're done." "It's not over," Pike shrieked, his voice cracking. "It's not over until I say I want the data. Vale, I want the phone, I want the hairpin, I want every copy. You give it to me. I give you the brother. You don't... He's the first to die." My mind was racing. The data, the phone. It was all in my pocket, wrapped in Dorian's jacket, which I still clutched. "Don't, Mira," Eli choked out, his eyes screwed shut. "Don't you do it. I'm done. Just don't." He was a soldier, ready to die. But I wasn't. "No," I said, stepping out from behind the pillar. My voice was cold. It was the coldest thing in the room. "No more trades, no more deals. You want me, you want the evidence, you get me, you let him go." Pike hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "What?" "A trade. Him for me. But not in here. Out there." I pointed toward the open pier, where the OUS cameras were still streaming, where the cops were massing. "We do it on the dock, in the light, where your new friends at the OUS can watch you execute a hostage, or you can let my brother go and take me, the real witness, the one who can send you away for life." It was a gamble, a desperate, insane bluff. Pike was trapped. Killing Eli now would be a public execution. He needed leverage. I was the leverage. "Fine," he snarled. "Fine. Send the brother out. You come to me. Now." "Lucia," I yelled. "Theo, the boat." It was a plan we never made, a perfect improvisation born of chaos. Pike looked confused, but only for a second. From under the pier, a motor sputtered to life, a small, aluminum rowboat, one of the dock's maintenance skiffs, suddenly roared out onto the water, Theo at the helm, creating a massive, noisy distraction. At the exact same instant, Lucia, who had flanked us from the side door, threw two objects. They rolled across the concrete floor and erupted. Thick, pressurized smoke billowed out, flooding the warehouse. It was not tear gas. It was a visual screen, blinding everyone. "Now!" Lucia screamed. Pike fired, his shot blind, the muzzle flash a terrifying, brief sun in the gray smoke. "No, get back here." I didn't hesitate. I grabbed Dorian's good arm, pulling his weight onto my own shoulder. "Move." He was heavy, a dead weight, but adrenaline is a powerful fuel. I dragged him through the smoke, toward the sound of the water. Mira Eli was yelling, lost in the smoke. "Go to the lights, Eli, go to Lucia, run," I screamed back. We burst out of the smoke onto the edge of the pier. The rowboat was right there, Theo holding it steady against the pilings. "Get in," he commanded. I practically shoved Dorian over the side. He collapsed onto the aluminum floor. I scrambled in after him, just as Pike burst from the smoke, his gun raised. Theo slammed the throttle. The small engine roared, and the boat jumped, spinning us away from the pier and into the dark, churning water of the bay. Pike fired twice. The shots were wild, lost in the wind and the rain. We were safe. We were in the middle of the dark, storm-tossed bay, just 20 yards from the pier. The entire dock was a chaotic light show of red and blue, the figures on it just silhouettes in the lingering smoke. I turned back to Dorian, and he was lying on the floor of the boat, his head propped against a seat, his eyes closed, his breathing was shallow. "Dorian," I said, my voice frantic. I grabbed his shirt. "Dorian, look at me. I'm still here. You're still here. Stay with me." I cupped his face. His skin was so cold. "Em con o day," I whispered, the Vietnamese words a desperate prayer. "I am still here." His eyes fluttered open. He looked at me, his gaze unfocused, then sharpening. He saw me. He really saw me. And in that moment, surrounded by dark water, with the wind and rain lashing us, with sirens screaming on the shore, I kissed him. It was not gentle. It was not a slow burn. It was a desperate, burning, elemental thing. It was a vow of survival. It was a claim. His lips were cold, tasting of rain and salt, but they moved against mine. His good arm came up, his hand tangling in my wet hair, pulling me down, his grip surprisingly strong. It was a kiss that said, "I am alive. You are alive. We are alive." I felt his heart, a slow, thudding drum, beating against my chest through our soaked clothes. I broke it, gasping for air. We rested our foreheads together, the aluminum of the boat rocking violently beneath us. We were both shaking. "After," he rasped, his eyes locking on mine. "We will talk." "We will," I promised. I looked back at the pier. Pike was there, a silhouette of defeated rage, surrounded by OUS agents with their guns drawn. He was done. But I wasn't. I pulled the black phone from Dorian's jacket. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I hit play. Kestrel had found it, the recording from the car, the real evidence. I turned the phone's speaker on, holding it up. The wind caught the sound, but it was enough. I aimed it at the pier, at the cops, at the flashing lights. Pike's voice, tinny and clear, cut through the storm. "It's a tragedy. A known criminal kingpin, Dorian Vale, ambushes a police protective detail. He's killed in the resulting firefight, and you're caught in the crossfire. One shot, two birds." And then, his confession. "The gratitude fund. Down in Belize, for all my hard work." The effect was instantaneous. Every OUS agent, every cop on that pier froze. They turned, as one, to look at Rowan Pike. They had not just caught a corrupt cop. They had caught a murderer. Live, confessing his own conspiracy. The wind tore at my hair, trying to rip the phone from my grasp. The anchor line snapped, the boat lurching in the waves. But I didn't flinch. I stood on the slick, unsteady floor of the boat, my feet planted, and I did not fall. I was no longer a waitress. I was no longer a victim. I was the one holding the truth, and I had just set it free. The confession, broadcast from my shaking hand, hung in the storm-filled air. It was an echo that killed the chaos. On the pier, every OUS agent, every state cop, every lingering MIB uniform turned their head from the water to the man at the center of their circle. Rowan Pike, defeated and exposed, was finally, truly done. The immediate aftermath was a blur of professional efficiency. Theo got the boat to the dock. Medics, real ones, swarmed us, strapping Dorian to a gurney. His eyes never left me, a silent, pained promise. Eli was wrapped in a shock blanket, his relief so profound he was shaking. But he was safe. Lucia was already talking to Director Evans, her voice crisp and legal, laying the groundwork for the new order. But it wasn't over. Not for me. In the confusion, as the OUS agents moved to cuff a stunned Rowan Pike, he moved. He was a creature of violence, and in the flood of official procedure, he saw one last, tiny gap. He shoved the agent nearest him, knocking him off balance, and sprinted, not toward the street, but toward the dark, forgotten end of the harbor, toward the repair and service docks. There was a repair ferry docked there, dark and silent, its engine idling, his escape. "He's running!" an agent yelled. Dorian, being lifted, tried to sit up. "Theo, stop him." No, the word was mine. I stepped in front of Theo. I looked at the dark, retreating figure, disappearing into the fog and steam rising from the ferry's vents. This wasn't a job for a soldier. This was an epilogue, and it was mine to write. "Mira, don't!" Dorian's voice was a strained command. "It's done. Let them handle it." "They're handling the law," I said, my voice quiet, but hard as the steel of the pier. "I'm handling the fear. It doesn't end until I close the book. Not for revenge, to be finished." I turned from him, from the safety he offered, and ran into the fog. This time, I protect me. And by doing that, I protect you. The air on the service pier was thick with the smell of diesel and damp, rotting wood. The ferry was a dark hulk, its ramp down. I walked onto the oily deck. It was quiet, save for the thrum of the engine. "You really are stupid, aren't you?" Pike stepped out from behind a winch. He was breathing heavily, his suit torn, the mask of authority gone, leaving only the rat-faced thug from the diner. He was cornered, and that made him deadly. "You thought I was weak," I said, walking slowly toward him, my hands open, visible. "I wasn't weak. I was just starved for justice." "You're done, Pike. There's nowhere left to run." "I'm not done," he roared, but his eyes were panicked. He fumbled inside his jacket, pulling his backup pistol. "Price is still out there. This all goes away. He'll make it go away." "He won't," I said. "He can't, because he's not on a plane. Is he?" "He was trying to escape with you." As if summoned, a figure emerged from the ferry's cabin. Alden Price. He looked like a ghost. His immaculate white jacket was stained, his face slick with sweat. He was holding a satellite phone. "Killer!" he screamed at a third man, a hired sniper who appeared on the upper deck. "Kill the feed, that's the only way." He thought I was still streaming to the OUS. He was right. I held up my phone, the one Kestrel had given me. "It's live. Gentlemen, the OUS Azure Harbor warrant is being issued right now. It's for both of you, for conspiracy, for money laundering, and for the attempted murder of a state witness." The sniper raised his rifle, the laser dot finding my chest. I saw a blur of motion from the pier. Dorian. He was off the gurney, his arm in a sling, his men supporting him. He was no longer a protected asset. The OUS line was behind him. He was just a man, running into a sniper's line of fire, to do the only thing he knew how, to protect. He was too far. He would never make it. "No!" a different voice roared. From the side deck of the ferry, where he had slipped on in the chaos, Eli launched himself. All those years as a Marine, all that coiled strength, released in one perfect saving tackle. He slammed into the sniper, sending him crashing into the bulkhead, the rifle fired, a single shot cracking into the night sky. Harmless. Pike saw his last chance evaporate. He lunged, not to shoot me, but to grab me, to take the hostage. He was fast, but I was faster. My hand didn't go for a gun. It went to my hair. I ripped the silver feather hairpin free. As his hand grabbed my shirt, his other hand bringing the pistol around, I didn't stab, I didn't scream, I acted. I jammed the solid, heavy pin of the hairpin through his trigger guard and slammed his hand, gun and all, against the steel railing of the ferry. The pin wedged, locking the trigger, locking his finger, pinning his entire hand to the rail in a tangle of metal. He screamed, a sound of pain, confused rage. He tugged, but the pin held. Theo Rudd was there a second later, his hand chopped down, breaking Pike's already shattered wrist. The gun clattered, the cuff snapped on. It was over. Price, seeing his last defense fall, scrambled backward. He tripped over a coil of rope, slipping on the oily deck. He teetered, his arms windmilling, and fell over the side, into the black water. He was underwater for only a second before an OUS agent grabbed him by his white jacket and hauled him up, sputtering and defeated. Not a martyr, not a ghost in the books, just a criminal, soaking wet, being pulled up to face a judge. The OUS announced the Clear Harbor Bridge initiative the next morning. It was a compromise, a messy, real-world solution. The Vail Consortium would be placed under temporary federal supervision in exchange for Dorian's full cooperation in opening his shipping lanes to legitimate, transparent trade. The gray area he lived in was not erased, but it was forced into the light, bound by rules. The night after the storm, the sky was impossibly clear, washed clean. I was in the Palladium Conservatory. It smelled of wet earth, citrus, and new beginnings. I was the one who poured the wine. 2 glasses. I was setting my own terms. When he arrived, his arm was in a black silk sling, his suit immaculate. He didn't speak. He just watched me. "We need a new agreement," I said, handing him a glass. "We do," he agreed. "If we are going to be together," I said, the word feeling new and heavy. "You have to let me in, all the way. I won't be protected. I will be a partner. You have to let me be the co-author of my own life." Dorian looked at me. his gray-green eyes searching my face. He took the wine, set it down, and placed his good hand over his heart. "And you," he said, his voice a low, solemn vow, "must let me be the co-commander. A partnership, an equal footing." I smiled. Done. I stepped toward him, and he met me halfway. He kissed me, and the world fell away. It was a deep, slow kiss that tasted of wine and survival. His good hand came up, not to possess, but to discover. It moved down my arm, and I felt his fingers pause, just slightly, as they brushed over the old, rough calluses on my palms and fingers, the ghosts of 1,000 plates I had carried, the permanent marks of the life I had left. He was learning me, not just claiming me. I pulled back, just enough to breathe, and put my hands on his shoulders. "My turn," I whispered. I led him, I slid my arms around his neck, and we moved. Not a passionate rush, but a slow, quiet dance, there among the citrus trees, with the newly clean lights of Harbor Fall glittering below. His jacket, the armor he wore, fell from his shoulders and landed on a chair. Forgotten. His eyes never left mine. There was a question in them, one he still did not know how to ask. My gaze was the answer. My smile was the affirmation. The night closed in, a soft, discreet curtain. He leaned his forehead against mine, and I heard his whisper, a final promise, not born of debt or fear or protection. We begin, not because we were scared, because we chose. I felt the last, tight knot of fear in my chest, the one I had carried since I was a child, finally, completely, untie. I was not a waitress. I was not a victim. I was not his asset. I was his equal. And far below, Harbor Fall, the city of rain and shadows, woke to a bright, clear, and spotless dawn. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where in the world you are tuning in from, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Let's connect if you enjoyed this. Please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and give it a little extra love by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.